Welcome to Resilience by Default. Today, we're diving into something big. We're breaking down a fundamental shift that's coming to the U.S. payments landscape, a regulatory shockwave that's set to hit in 2026 and will completely reshape how money moves and, crucially, how risk is managed. Now, this isn't some pie-in-the-sky, futuristic question. According to Terry, this is the new reality that's taking shape as we speak. It's a hard pivot to continuous, data-rich oversight across every single payment rail. And it all kicks off in a place you probably wouldn't expect. So where does this all start? Well, with the catalyst for this entire change, the Automated Clearinghouse Network, or ACH. Yep, that's right. The sleepy, old back-office rail is about to give the entire industry a wake-up call. What's so fascinating here is the shift in mindset this represents. Think about it. We're moving away from a traditional office hours approach, where risk is handled in comfortable batches, to an always-on, 24/7 risk posture. So even if the actual money, the settlements, remains scheduled, the operational brain behind it has to be running continuously. And let's be clear, this isn't just about tweaking a few rules. What Terry's work highlights is a complete root and branch operational overhaul. It's forcing institutions to build sophisticated scoring and behavioral baselines for every single non-consumer originator. We're moving way beyond simple static rules. And the scope of fraud? It's widening dramatically to include things like scams, not just the classic unauthorized debits. So, what's the big takeaway here? The crucial point is that ACH is being dragged, almost kicking and screaming, into a modern, real-time risk posture. It has to be designed, staffed, and tooled up as if it were a real-time system, and this fundamental change creates that shockwave we talked about, a ripple effect that's going to touch every other part of the payments ecosystem. And this is where things get really interesting. Because once you create these tough new expectations for ACH, it sets off this massive domino effect. You see, for the longest time, risk has been managed in these neat little boxes, right? Rail by rail. ACH had its standards, while the real-time networks like RTP and FedNow had theirs. They all operated in their own distinct silos, playing by different rules. But this shows you the new reality. Because think about it, once ACH has to start monitoring for really complex scams and false pretense credits, well, it becomes totally impossible to justify having looser controls on the instant payment rails like RTP and FedNow. It just doesn't make sense. And that forces a harmonization, a convergence of standards right across the board. So in effect, the real-time rails become the gold standard, the reference point for what a data-rich, properly risk-managed payment should look like. But instead of them being in a separate league, their standards are now pulling ACH up to sit much, much closer to them. So how is this complex cross-rail oversight even possible? Well, it requires a whole new set of tools. This new interconnected world of risk management is only really feasible because of two key bits of technology that have, luckily for us, matured at just the right moment. First up, you've got the data itself. We're talking about ISO 2022. Think of it as a universal translator for payments. It provides this rich, structured, common language for all the payment rails. And that means, for the very first time, you can actually compare and analyze transactions for the same person or company across different systems because the data finally lines up properly. And the second piece of the puzzle is the engine that actually processes all of that rich data: artificial intelligence. Machine learning models can just absorb this flood of ISO-fed data, build incredibly detailed behavioral profiles for customers and accounts, and then flag anything that looks weird, any anomaly, in real time. By 2026, monitoring won't be a static rules engine anymore. It'll be a continuously learning risk fabric that's stretched across the entire system. Of course, whenever you build a faster, smarter, more connected system, you're not just creating new opportunities for the good guys. You're also inevitably opening up the door to more sophisticated fraudsters. And the number one threat you really need to get your head around in this new world is something called authorized push payment, or APP fraud. This is so important because the entire game changes. The focus of the attack shifts from technical hacks, like stealing a password, to the psychological manipulation of the customer themselves. So what does this look like in practice? Well, as Terry lays out, we're talking about fraud on an industrial scale. We're going to see these huge fraud networks using AI-driven scams and synthetic identities. They'll choreograph attacks across multiple rails. maybe steal credentials through one system, then cash out instantly using RTP or FedNow. And they will exploit any gap in visibility between those systems. This means organizations have to start designing for scam risk explicitly and investing in analytics that can see across all these silos.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the 2026 rules, and they're obviously the immediate focus. But the huge architectural decisions being made right now to meet these new demands, well, they have consequences that stretch out for decades.
And that brings us to this really crucial idea, crypto agility. It sounds complicated, but the concept is pretty simple. As we're modernizing all these payment platforms, we have to build them in a way that protects us from a future threat, quantum computing, which will, one day, be able to break most of our current encryption.
The principle here is so simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Don't wait for the deadline to be staring you in the face. You have to build that flexibility in from day one. Treat your encryption algorithms like a setting you can change, not something that's hard-coded deep inside the system. If you do that, migrating to post-quantum standards later becomes a manageable update, not a catastrophic, heart-stopping rebuild.
So, as we start to wrap this up, it all comes back to this one crucial question you need to ask yourself. Is your payments architecture built just to scrape by with today's rules, or is it truly built for tomorrow's reality? Because this 2026 shockwave isn't just about compliance, it's a catalyst, forcing everyone to move towards a unified, real-time, and intelligent risk architecture. And the decisions you make now will decide if you're building for the future or just ticking a box for today.
We put out deep dives like this every Tuesday on Spotify and YouTube. If this was useful, do us a favor and hit like, subscribe, or maybe share it with a colleague. It honestly makes a huge difference and helps us figure out what topics to tackle next for you.
And hey, speaking of diving deeper, if you're interested in this stuff, Terry himself is going to be at the Resilience Association's 6th Annual Summit. That's on Tuesday, the 9th of June. This year's theme is Critical Third Parties, Strengthening the Backbone of Resilience. And he's even got a discount code for our listeners. Just DM him directly to get it. Thanks for tuning in.